The stock market is likely to move higher over the next few weeks, but it's going to be choppy. Today is Sunday, August 16th, and last week has been largely flat. So investors have been expecting a move after CPI and PPI. We did not get it. And essentially, the market has been digesting the massive move since late July. We had a massive 2 week run up on both S&P 500 and the triple Qs. And interestingly enough, individual names and semiconductors have been starting to turn up. So let's get right to it. And stick around until the end of the video because I'm going to give you some sort of, estimate as to how the NASDAQ is going to move over the next few weeks. So in terms of, events over the next week, we're going to have two very important ones. On Wednesday, we're going to have the FOMC minutes, and on Thursday, we're going to have the initial jobless claims. Now, I used Claude to kind of build this dashboard a little bit, and they're saying that the FOMC minutes and jobless claims are the volatility centers this week. Both land in this window when gamma is most reactive. And so essentially what you have to pay attention to is, Monday and Tuesday is going to be relatively muted, but then these 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday is probably going to move the stock market. So these events are worth paying attention to. Now, if you look at AMD, AMD is a very interesting stock. It's been consolidating for a very long time. I've been expecting AMD to move down, even further into this 350 area. But you can see that, we did not get a fresh MACD cross since early June. So, in early June, we had, divergences, and then we started to turn down on the MACD while the individual stock price has been ever so slightly moving higher. And, this tells me that AMD has been trading relatively sideways. The strength is there in the stock. So I would not be surprised to see, you know, weekly divergences in AMD and even higher price above 584 before it actually starts to turn down. So you can see that, all this time has been digesting this move here, you know, letting the indicators reset on the MACD and the RSI, moving sideways, correcting in time and not price. And now on Friday, we got a fresh bullish momentum cross on the MACD. Histogram started, this is the first histogram green bar since literally, 3 months ago, early June, right? We have, you know, July, June, and then pretty much half of August. So for the past 3 months, this is the first bar we've got. And I would say this is actually bullish for AMD. AMD is likely to push even higher, in the months to come. Next up, we have Micron. Micron has been the talk of the tape over the past week. We got, a fresh MACD cross in the last week, and it's been trading largely sideways, but for the past 2 days we got a large push in Micron, over 100 points for Micron. And so you can see it's pretty much the same thing. We had not had an MACD bullish cross since early June, even though the price was making a higher high. It's been correcting in time and not price, and it's found support at the 100 moving average, which is this white line here. So, Micron and AMD are, semis and, memory stocks that has been dragging down the NASDAQ since early June, and now it's starting to turn up. So what does that mean for the overall stock market and NASDAQ? If these stocks, individual stocks like AMD and Micron, continues its push higher, it's likely to, move the NASDAQ, drag the NASDAQ even higher in the months to come. So whatever correction you're talking about, whether Tom Lee was talking about a 10% correction after S&P hits 8,000, I think that the correction will be relatively muted. You probably still will get the 10% correction, albeit probably at higher levels. But as you can see, SMH, right, the semiconductor ETF, has reclaimed the 9 exponential moving average on the weekly time frame. It's still possible that we come down here, but it's good news that we had this massive green bar last week to reclaim the 9, and now this week it's holding the 9 exponential moving average. So it would not surprise me at all if the market were to get a real pullback, that this ETF would make a higher high to form a weekly divergence before all is said and done. And here you can see the triple Qs, it's largely diverging from S&P 500. The S&P has made higher highs, but the triple Qs has struggled to do so, largely because of semis and memory stocks. But as you can see with AMD, Micron, it's not just these stocks. Other stocks like Intel, like Marvell, they're getting buy signals on the daily time frame. If these stocks continue to push higher, this is the first bullish momentum signal we've seen in a very long time. So if these stocks continue to push higher, it would not surprise me that it would kind of you know support the Nasdaq, if you will, from any heavy downside, and support the Nasdaq to keep pushing even higher. And as you can see, we had this massive move up. We've been digesting the move for about the past week or so, and we're starting to get this pop here. So these gaps are kind of resistances to look at. If we just do decide to clear these resistances, we can hit all-time highs on the Nasdaq. And you can see on the hourly time frame, we had this pretty much consolidation for the past week, and we popped above on Thursday, and then we retested that same level on Friday. So this is not a bearish development at all. And you can see here on the software ETF, the IGV, that it's been making negative divergences on the 4-hour time frame. So this is actually bad news for software stocks, but possibly good news for semiconductors, because money can start to rotate from these massive moves in these software names like ServiceNow and Microsoft, and money could rotate back into semiconductors and memory stocks. So you can see here massive negative triple negative divergences on the software ETF. Now, the other thing to pay attention to is the week following next week, we have Nvidia earnings. This is going to be the most watched earnings report since the Mag 7, essentially. So we have Nvidia reporting on Wednesday. We have a slew of other earnings like Salesforce, Okta, HP, Viva. We have Workday the following day. So Nvidia is going to be the market mover in the weeks to come. So I'm thinking that the market could run up, and for maybe early this week or into late this week, we get that correction into Nvidia, which happened to coincide with 826, and then Nvidia will send us a lot higher. So in this correction that we're probably going to get, I don't expect any massive correction, simply because of the semiconductor stocks like AMD and Micron. If these stocks continue to push even higher, it's hard to imagine that Nasdaq will get any sort of meaningful correction, right? So this is essentially my best guess. Don't read too much into it. This is pretty much an estimate. Obviously, conditions can change. So will the projection, but this is essentially my best guess at this moment. I think we're going to get a push up and then some sort of consolidation leading up into Nvidia report, and then Nvidia is just going to send us higher into Labor Day holiday before we get that probably September correction. But that's to be determined. So hope this helps you guys. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.